I'm at the Red House with Haydee Thompson, and thank you for coming over.
Hi.
So we have a lot to tell. And what's your dog's name?
This is Poppy. Very, very distracting.
We don't want to.
Sorry, she's rather a puppy. So, but I'm afraid to let her run loose in the house because she might knock over the camera or something.
Gotcha.
But she'll calm down in a minute. She's just.
Well, we wouldn't want to not introduce her.
Super cute, though.
She is super cute.
Just a little crazy.
Poppy.
Puppy.
Hey, girl. Hey. Yeah.
Oh, this was a mistake. I could put her in the car.
No, this is great.
Okay.
This is going to be great. Ian Butera brought his
yeah.
girl over. So we're going to talk about a few things, but we might as well start with the major thing.
Okay.
Let's talk a bit about Full Moon Festival.
Yeah.
Let's see. Let's just start with where it started. Like, where did this thing come from?
Well, Tessa, Everton, and I have a history of putting on art marts through what used to be the Warehouse Art Hotel. Now we're in a new location, the Winston-Salem Art Hotel, and thinking about how we can kind of bring Art Mart back, but with a new, just turn a new page with it. And Lindsay Potter joined the team, and the three of us just started having weekly meetings about what was possible, before we even came up with a name. Mm-hmm. And so the idea is to involve as many artists and musicians and vendors and foodies and everything, and have a sort of small version of a festival that maybe in the future we might extend for, another day or another night. So we'd have, instead of just a 6-hour festival next time, we might have a 2-day festival,
Yeah.
But bringing in the community and sort of hey, we're here, West Salem, and come and enjoy this. It's for all of us. And also bringing in collaborations with the West Salem Public House and Apple and Green Farm. And I'm right there on the corner of Green and Albert Street, which is right next door to the public house, and abutted to the farm.
Gotcha.
So
that's the farm behind Public House?
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. Okay.
So just wanting an excuse really to, pull in those collaborations and, work together and see how it goes. And so I think that if I answered your question.
You did. Yeah.
Okay.
That's the origin story. So, yeah, we're obviously lacking in festivals or whatever, and there's the occasional small art market or something that might go on,
right.
Smaller events. But yeah, pretty much this has not been talked about yet in 30-something episodes of the show, but since Fuzz Fest isn't around, we don't have like a major art festival that goes on, it feels like.
Well, there is Ardmore Art Walk. Mm-hmm. These are similar things. The craft shows that they have, I think visually and in essence would be similar to what we're doing, except we're adding a music element, a performance art element, and so it's not strictly the vendors. We're still adding things like we want to have a children's rave. That we just started talking about this because there's a little grassy knoll, if you will, and we're getting a canvas lodge, is what they call it, like a teepee-shaped canvas lodge, and want to hand out maybe glow sticks and Ride at Dark, kind of play some rave music for the kids to dance before they have to go home. Also, part of this too was to make it very family friendly, and fun for everyone, really. So, and the fact that part of it takes place in the daytime and part of it takes place in the evening, kind of allows for all walks to sort of engage at the time of day that they're most present, or want to engage. So if you're a night owl, come around 8:00. And, if you want to just afternoon after your lunch and after you take your nap on Saturday, wake up and meander around. I think we're going to have 33 vendors of art and crafts and workshops and demonstrations. And another thing for the children we're having is the UNCSA Community Music School is coming out to give demonstrations. I don't know yet what instrument they're going to focus on, but imagine it were a cello. And I've witnessed this before where you have children sitting in front of you with an instrument that they haven't ever heard for the first time, or on a personal level seen played for them just singularly, and how magical and inspiring that can be. So I'm really excited about that. Reverie Drums also is giving a demonstration.
That's cool.
Yeah. So I'm excited about that. And then the workshops, from their booths, we have a lot of things going on. Mixer is doing some sort of, I'm going to get this wrong, but if you go to the website and click on it, it'll have the description of what they're doing. But you carve something, and then there on site, they're going to pour hot molten metal into your form that you've carved, and then give you that piece to take home with you as a memento.
Oh, that's cool.
And they have something called the poofer, which, gosh, Alan Shelton, I love you. I guess every time a valid credit card interaction has been made, they have a machine that shoots fire into the air. So I just want to get all the insurance ducks in a row, but he's being given a little bit of extra space at his booth for sure.
I see.
Village Fabrics is doing a natural dye workshop as well. I know I'm missing a bunch of things, but anyway.
Well, man, that sounds like a lot of variety. You guys have thought about a lot of different stuff.
Yeah, and we kind of wanted it to be arts and agriculture, and we probably have less agriculture than we wanted to have, because it's the harvest moon, right? So it's the harvest moon is the date that is the full moon of September 10th.
I see.
So it just made sense. And because much of the festival will be taking place in and around Apple and Green Farm, but we have found, strangely, or maybe this was intentional, a lot of our artisans are sort of nature-based, so they're creating things out of wools that they've harvested, or the natural dye. So and then these beautiful embroidered mushrooms, and I don't know, it's very sweet. I think it's a wholesome festival, and I'm really looking forward to it.
Well, yeah, you answered two of my questions. One being just to make a point of mentioning the date, and also why the name. So it's in the full moon of the harvest moon or whatever.
And we found that there are many full moon festivals. Obviously, I think Raylan may have just had one, and our screen printer got confused and said something in her email of like, I love axe throwing. And we were like, axe throwing? We don't have axe throwing. And looked it up, and Raylan's Full Moon Festival, they had axe throwing. I was like, that's a great idea. We should have had axe throwing.
You could have got them guys over there. Yeah.
I know, right? What is that place called?
I don't know what it's called,
Okay,
but
we know that
yeah, in the like
bar where they have axe throwing
near
which
Earl's.
is just crazy.
Yeah.
Fun. Anyway, but why the full moon festival to that point. So all of the art marts that we had done in the past, we intentionally chose a full moon to enact them. For me, it's purely logical. You look for a full moon that takes place on a Saturday, and it usually worked out to be, right before Christmas, or, so we have a sort of Christmas art mart, or, but it also, it gives you a goal that you've set, and then you can kind of, to sound a little new agey, you work with, the waxing of the moon to get your everything accomplished, and it just seemed like a natural timeline, a way to, we're all ladies too. We deal with the month-to-month moon cycles, if you will, so it just made sense. And in this case, it was kind of a no-brainer. When's the full moon, and the next time Saturday, and the amount of time that would take to put on something this big, or the timeline allows you to know how big you're going to do it, as well as the space. And so, it's always been a thing. And, there are 12 full moons in a year, and that also allows you a little room to play with for future, festivals.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tons of.
And great graphics come with that. Full moons. It's very easy to design around the imagery.
Well, and
romantic.
Yeah, offering an observation exactly about that, the romance of it. It's like it seems to be a nice symbol of the balance of the relationship between like aesthetics, like art, and agriculture.
Yeah,
like it relates to both of those things, and that's what I wanted to ask you about. That's what I want to ask you about. So, doing this podcast, I have talked to a lot of artists who seem to have had this nature side of them born within the last couple years. That seems to be like a movement almost that we're experiencing socially. I'm wondering what your perspective is on that, like this interesting relationship that you guys landed on with art and agriculture being a part of this event.
Well, like I said, we were inspired by what kind of moon it was, in this case in particular. I can't exactly speak on what you've noticed necessarily. That's something I need to process and think about for a second. But the fact that it was the harvest moon, the fact that at the art hotel, we're literally waking up to roosters.
Right.
We're 3 minutes away from downtown, but I feel like I'm in the country, and I personally, I love there's so many different kinds of artists and so many different mediums in which they work. I am one of those kids that would wander into the forest and make a doll out of sticks, as a kid. And I still feel that way today, except instead of the woods, I'm looking at, maybe items that people have forgotten about or thrown away, or, reusing things. A lot of the hotel, I'm collecting things that I can build other beautiful objects with that, otherwise would be in a landfill or something. I guess what I'm trying to say is that leave it to an artist to be creative and use the things around them to create something beautiful. And consider nature. And I think the times have changed, and I think we are more aware of what we use and what we discard, and we think deeply about the material that we use to make art. And in this case of the festival, I have noticed that many of the artists, vendors that will be there consider that. And and I think it makes for the longevity of an object or an item that was made with that care and thought and love to be of particular value for generations. Like, I think of my grandmother handing me something that her grandmother made with her hands, and there seems to be a lot of that in this festival, a sort of heirloomy.
Yeah. It's exactly the word that was in my head.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if heirloomy is a word, but but yeah, and I don't know if we veered off of your question or.
Oh, I think that's pretty on spot.
Traveled down a rabbit hole with it. But.
Which rabbit holes are more than welcome, but I do see some similarity between something like the process of agriculture, and I mean the word heirloom is throughout agriculture a lot, and that having stuff in common with the idea of the value of not just art but things like lasting.
Yeah.
That's what we're doing with agriculture too, is
Right.
figuring out ways to make food last and like reproduce and stuff. So I totally see the overlap you're describing. So what I'd like to do, if you'll humor me, I'd like to go back to like the deepest roots of this festival, which is kind of your experience in the community. So if you will humor me in kind of going through some of your bio and leading up to what led us to this festival, is that something you'd be down with?
Yeah. Kind of like my connection with Winston.
Yeah.
Or sort of how that.
So, I mean, you're obviously part of what a lot of us think of as like this thing that happened in Winston around Crankies and stuff.
The warehouse.
The warehouse that ended up kind of, it played a big role in the development of the larger art community for a lot of us.
Okay, well, how I kind of got involved with, like, how far do you want to go? I will say, okay, I'll make a long story short.
Okay.
So my grandmother was born here, my dad was born here, but they moved and lived around the world. We all as a family grew up, or I did, in Arlington, Virginia, and Washington, D.C.
Okay.
And around the matriarch of my family, which was my grandmother, Nanny, who would talk to me about Winston-Salem all growing up. And me being selfish, know-it-all, precocious kid, I would be like, yeah, I know where the witches were burned, wherever. Like, I just didn't really, my bubble was where I was. And until I was looking at schools to go to study drama. And one of the top drama schools happened to be in Winston-Salem at UNCSA. Back then it was NCSA. And it so happened that she was retiring at the same year that I was going to college. And her plan was to move back to Winston-Salem to kind of finish this circle, and this is where her roots were. And she was born in a house, and, my great-grandfather was the first chief of police in Winston-Salem. Like, all of these, she went to Reynolds High School. And I wanted to go to a top drama school, and I happened to get in. So what ended up happening is we became roommates,
Fun.
And she really, for the first time, we would drive around, and she'd point to these houses that my family, that I never met before because they had passed, my ancestors, and their whole stories. And for the first time, I really felt like I had roots, you know, because my mother's British, everyone's over there. As soon as Nanny left DC area, everyone moved away. I moved around a lot as a kid. So wow, I have these roots. And I started to hang out. I finished my first year at School of the Arts, and then my sophomore year I finished at School of the Arts, and I got into this band. And Squatweiler. And I really wanted to take a year off of school, also to get my in-state residency, so I didn't have to pay as much. Sorry. Yeah. And so I took a year off, and I ended up touring with my band and making connections locally that I otherwise wouldn't have made, because School of the Arts is very insular.
Right.
So, and they don't really let you participate in anything extracurricular outside and part of Winston, or at least when I was there. So I immediately tapped into the art scene as it was, which was at the time music-based. You know, it was strong in the music scene. And punk mostly, you know. And we had a very popular band. I went back, I finished my junior year, I finished my senior year, I graduated. I moved to New York because that's what you do. I got on a Broadway national tour of Guys and Dolls, Then 9/11 happened. I jumped the gun a little bit, but I am furiously trying to make art with people in New York City, being in bands, and I was having a really hard time finding people that kind of didn't have an agenda, that just made art amongst friends for art's sake.
Right.
And at the same time, I'm on the phone with my friends at the warehouse who I had hung out with before I graduated. So this early 90s or mid 90s.
And mind if I ask, what was the warehouse at that point?
So the warehouse was an abandoned building in an abandoned downtown in a dying tobacco city that, back in the day it was a desert. There was nothing there. And my friends wanted to practice music. They were trying to play in the suburbs, you know, at somebody's mom's house or somebody's house, and kept getting the cops called on them. They're like, let's sneak around. They broke into the warehouse. It had electricity, and they, you know, had band practices in there. They found out who owned it. They, you know, put on a tie and went and, you know, bought the building. And from that point on, you know, and then it just turned into this mecca of music and shows and art and creative thinking and freedom. And, you know, it was just, if you felt like you wanted to have a parade about soccer, you know, you made all the costumes and floats and did a parade downtown with the theme of soccer. But no one was there to see it, you know. But
right.
Yeah, you felt like you had this whole urban spelunking landscape of, you know, possibilities, and that came out in the art we made. And so yeah, by the time I came back into the warehouse, it was organized a little bit.
And so
I say that lightly.
So you're in New York. You were talking to people.
Yeah.
About what was going on in
I was working
Winston.
for David Byrne, too. So I got this job as a personal assistant for David Byrne. So I was also meeting some incredible artists and things, but the job was kind of like taking care of the details of his life and their family's life. And then I had to take care of my details, and then there was little time to actually do the things that I wanted to do, you know. And I was doing that for about 4 years. This was toward, you know, and then the millennial, and then September 11th happened, and I was just like, do I stay or do I go? Everybody had a headache, and then you had the anthrax. I mean, just like a stress. Everybody, it was just so stressful. And at the same time, I'm on the phone with my friends at the warehouse who are like in all these bands, and they're having the dream, when you're struggling in New York for all those years, you're just like, oh, to go back there, just pack it up and give this a shot. And that's what I did. I think in 2003, 2002, maybe October of 2002, moved back to Winston-Salem, and pretty much exclusively hung out at the warehouse. And then we planned the Grease Bus tour. You know about that? Mm-hmm. So there was this. We had ran on vegetable oil, and we had 14 acts on the bus, and we toured for 2 months, and kind of a guerrilla style where we just walk into a North Dakota bar and start playing music and, hope for the best.
Yeah, I think
a lot of times.
There's like
There's
documentary.
a really cool documentary made by Frank Eaton. It's on, I broke it into episodes on YouTube. So it's called Invisible States, which is also the name of like my solo project that I've had forever. So he liked the name. He took it. There's no this isn't about me at all. He was just like, this is a great name. But I put it in episodes. It starts with a Philip K. Dick quote every episode. And then, but it's beautifully shot. It's this sort of like the last bastion of just, at least for me, of just absolute horror and freedom and hilarity. It was kind of cool to have that experience. But over the years, people grew up. The town, the innovation quarter bloomed. And this is something that I filmed out of the warehouse window for years. I have a time lapse of like all the buildings being refurbished and I haven't released it. I'm just kind of like, I want to finish it.
Yeah.
And all the telephone poles being plucked out of the ground and but that happened, things get a little more tricky when you're dealing with new regulations and higher property taxes. And I can't speak on, I didn't own the building, but it put a lot of pressure on that building to upfit and to fit in with, like, we could no longer be this renegade, like, mess.
Yeah.
Beautiful mess. Like, it had to be somehow legitimized. So to the end, Crankies came out of that. And we still were having shows. I mean, we had amazing shows. We had Cat Power played there, Melt Banana, like Friends Forever. I'm trying, just these, Bonnie Prince Billy. I know I'm missing hundreds of well-known acts, but it was on the tour of these alternative Devendra Bandhart, of people that really cool. And I don't want to take that for granted. Like, I was a part, like, I saw these, I was able to, and I didn't even have to live in New York,
Yeah.
So that was really cool. And I think it brought in, like, a lot of people, too, to see things that they would not normally see in Winston-Salem, real art. And so that's kind of where the art hotel bloomed out of originally, was to continue to have a place as possible as could be that would bring in experiences and artists from outside in, as well as, but in this case, it's kind of flipped. It's kind of cool because what we're doing now is bringing people from outside to see the local art. You know what I mean? Whereas before, the locals would come to see outside art.
Yeah.
But I'd love to get established enough in the future to be able to bring in outside artists to inspire local artists and, have residencies. And that's kind of the dream. So, yeah, I mean, and then, so I spent about almost 20 years at the warehouse.
Yeah.
And saw the whole, beginning, middle, end as far as my narrative, my story. It's still going on, though, so, it's surviving. I think they finally got rights to the parking lot from the railroad, finally.
Oh.
So, yeah.
Interesting.
So, good things are happening over there, I guess. Yeah.
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 Yeah, I mean, of course, good things are happening, and we don't even need to talk about this necessarily. It's just that,
Yeah.
It's changed a lot.
Yeah.
For people like me. And I guess to give you some context about me, Cranky's was the first thing that I gravitated to downtown, and it was like the first reason I ever actually went downtown as a driving person, as a person who could go around, was a teacher of mine was like introduced us to Mellow Mushroom. I didn't know what it was. And so we went and did that. And I was like, man, I want to go back downtown. And I was hanging out with Matt Alvedo of The Genuine. And we were just like wanting to go downtown places, and we didn't really know where. And he, I think, told me like, you need to go to Cranky's. That's where like people like us are. And I was like, all right. So we went down there, and that was all we did for sort of years, was went and did that. I started playing shows there, and the shuffle was going on at the time. And so all this weird shit was happening.
Yeah.
And it was like the first places I knew of were Mellow Mushroom, Aperture, Cranky's, and I think at the time Brew Nerds was on 4th Street. So that was pretty much my world until things started to blossom. And of course, a lot of stuff has changed, and I'm sure we could compare a lot of differences that have been born over the last couple years. But to cut to the chase, you're now in this whole world where you're doing, like, you're able to, your artistic identity and experiences and all this stuff can exist outside of that space, and you can go into and now you're over there at West End.
West Salem.
West Salem, right. You're at West Salem, bringing something new about. So that's a very positive thing. So this idea of the art hotel.
Well, what's the cut to the chase part?
Cutting to what we're doing now.
Oh, okay.
What we're doing now.
Because I was going to say, I just want to say that I'm aware that there are so many feelings about Cranky's and the warehouse. And, I have them. Everybody has them. But, what I did learn from that experience there is things have to change.
Yeah.
And, to never take for granted what you do have, because it could have to go away, So the stage was taken out. And, oh, God, when they banned smoking in there for the first time, I think I shed like 1,000 tears upstairs. It's ridiculous. And now it's like a totally normal thing that you just don't smoke inside of but that was what I knew as, oh, it's going to be so crappy, shitty. It's going to be different. But it just, there has to be an evolution for new stuff to out the nature. Like, it has to die for the new sprouts to grow. And, hopefully there's a new generation that was, somehow inspired by that and not even know it or whatever. And, they're doing some cool shit somewhere, hopefully,
Yeah.
And the same with me, like knowing that I don't need the warehouse to continue this mission. The warehouse fertilized the mission, definitely. And it was a kind of incubator for a lot of cool things. Camino started in the basement of the warehouse. Stitch was, in the warehouse. the art hotels and so it's kind of like if you think of it as an incubator, and yes, sad that the stage is gone, but we have new stages and new people that are booking cool bands. And anyway,
Yeah.
I just wanted to get to that point because there has been a lot of angst and sadness over the loss of something, but I would challenge that it's not lost.
Yeah.
That it's still vibrant.
Yeah, I'd like to hope so.
Yeah.
On the music side of things, it's hard to believe that sometimes, and that's not the fault of Crankies at the Garage or venues at all. It's more so the fault of the internet and the way that it has changed the way that music is consumed. And I think that's why having live music became less valuable over the last decade or whatever, and less profitable for businesses and for paying rent. It might not be the best method it obviously is not the best method for keeping your rent paid to have music, but that doesn't do much. Like, it's still hard for us who want to do that in person,
That's
so
good. I mean, I need to hear that. I want, everyone needs to hear that.
it is what it is. Spotify, streaming and YouTube have changed a lot of shit for us,
I find it challenging also, and I kind of try to meet it in the middle when thinking about programming at the hotel. So, for instance, we started these outdoor art film nights, and they're on some Thursdays. And I'll just comb the internet for some weird, cool shit that artists have made, visual art. I know this isn't live music related necessarily, but it's speaking to that internet thing. But pulling it on a screen, all the little solar tea lights come on, projecting, some very meditative, visually interesting things. But I think my point is that it's, for me, and people I've talked to, snaps you out of that TikTok kind of thing. I do have to, I find myself, I tell people how long the pieces are because of that. I don't want them to be if it's just something that it's not a narrative. It doesn't have a beginning, middle, and end.
Right.
Oftentimes, how long is this going to last? You get a little anxiety, this is only 12 minutes long, and that relaxes a person I can handle 12 minutes, and see this. But it's I'm thinking about it in terms of how do I get, because I love TikTok and Instagram. I'm not so much in the Facebook thing, but I love making little short films about what's coming up, and then garnering some kind of hype behind them, I guess marketing or whatever. But having people, and every week it's been more and more people, and so I feel there's a need for this. There's a need to step outside of that social, have an event. And this is kind of like seeing a live band, but having a place to go where you're all together, looking at the same thing together, having the same experience, interpreted through your own experience, like you would going to see a band. Everybody's going to hear it through their own, experience, and then this is more visual. But and the same with performance art. I just want a space where people can feel comfortable to get together to see some art, and whether that's music or. But you're right. I mean, now that I think about it, it's been a while since I have. The garage closed down. There's a theater in it now. And it's not live music, but I went to go see Metamorphosis the other week.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, I'm in the garage, where I've had these experiences before. It was a different artistic experience, but it was live. It was people who had rehearsed and practiced what they were doing and telling a story through this medium. And I mean, in ways, maybe, it's up to I'm a musician too sometimes, but it's up to us to force yourself, maybe it's not at a club, you know. We used to have shows in people's basements and garages and, in their backyards and I don't know.
I think to add a little bit to it, because I'm not trying to be totally cynical strictly about the internet. I think also what happened was like in, I don't know, the 2010s or maybe sooner than that. I think there was a huge eruption of people who recording equipment was cheap, guitars were cheap, music was a thing to do. I think there was a time that was like a good time where music was ripe, where a lot of people got involved in it. And then amidst that, there was a time that I'm aware of where people saw it as a easy opportunity to to become I'm going to become a working musician or whatever. And I think for a while there, it was just so saturated that so many people wanted to do it that like it actually did become less valuable. And I mean, that's part of the reason that I went on a hiatus, was like I started to feel like there's no distinction between musics anymore or whatever. There's kind of no telling what is cool and what's exciting and what's good and what's like there's no value here. There's just a bunch of presence. So I kind of stepped away, and I think right now we're still in a time where music just is not the most valuable experience that people can have. I think what you're describing, like the sort of social component of it, I think is kind of more valuable than just being in a place where music is happening.
Right.
So I don't know. It's not all cynicism. I think
no, this is something. I mean,
these things happen.
Yeah.
There's times in community, like to draw a comparison. There's times in communities where graffiti is like super it's a time for it when things are just too rusty and too fucked up and too dry. Then all of a sudden graffiti becomes really interesting, and like murals become interesting.
Yeah.
There's also a time where it's like if you have a mural all over the city, then you're not in desperate need of them. I think we just haven't been in desperate need of music for like a while.
Right.
I think we're in desperate need of social interaction and
Yes.
things like what you're doing, honestly. Things that create new opportunities for people instead of just like the same old shit they've always done.
I still want to give a big shout out to Monstercade, who is, and the Ramcat, who are offering. I mean, I know Monstercade has multiple shows a week, and the Ramcat's still doing, they're as great as programming as they ever have.
Oh yeah.
But I hear you.
Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
I hear you. Yeah, I totally understand what you're saying. Poppy, pray. Good girl, pray. Oh my gosh. Okay, you can stop praying now.
She's so fun.
She's a sweetie.
And I love Ramcat, by the way, and
Yeah.
I support Monstercade too.
Yeah.
I support live music all across the board.
Yeah.
I just think sometimes it's okay for the economics of it all to shift around. It's inevitable.
Yeah. Anyway.
Anyway, so back to it. So cutting to the chase. I want to understand a little bit more. I want to just hear you talk a little bit more about the vision of the art hotel thing, like what it is and what, I don't know, like what made you do that?
Okay. Well, I sort of touched on that before. What started that was everyone had moved out of the warehouse, and we had to kind of come up with something to pay the bills, I guess, but also, really worried about it having to turn into lawyers' offices or high-end apartments or something like that. So in need of trying to avoid that, it was something we had talked about for years, was like this would be such a cool bed and breakfast or hotel, like, because we had hosted bands for years, and we were hosts in that sense. Like, and I come from my British side of the family has a bit of that in them, the old bed and breakfasts, and tea time and blah, blah, blah. And I've stayed in some really nice ones myself. So I thought I could do it. But when it was just going to be like the Warehouse Hotel or something, and it just felt wrong. And it took like all of about 5 minutes to be like, if you just stick the word art in there, it opens up this whole can of worms that gives you purpose in life that, is what we're trying to avoid losing here, We don't want to just throw away the whole history of what just happened at the warehouse and all these experiences that we had.
Yeah.
And it used to be a very exclusive place. You were cool if you made it upstairs to the warehouse. And in this scenario, unlocking that gate and letting everyone in and having, letting everyone have that experience, which is what downstairs was with the bands, but like have it upstairs because now Crankies was Crankies,
Yeah.
And then that went swimmingly for almost 5 years. And then COVID. I started hosting. All of a sudden, I had 3 months of bookings just canceled in the matter of days, and I was like, "Oh, what do we do?" And I remember having a nurse. On occasion, nurses would call and ask if they could stay, travel nurses, for like 3 months, and I'm like, no, we don't do that because we have art shows and people. We just can't shut a part down for that long. You can stay for like a week. But anyway, it was like, ding, what about those nurses? They must be needed in this situation and need a cool place to stay. And so it turned into this sort of the warehouse nurse hotel for a while.
Wow.
And it was, Crankies was on lockdown. They were trying and I say that because, the ownership is, it's part of the building. It worked as a system, so Crankies wasn't like a separate entity from upstairs. The owners were the same. And so, the bills still had to be paid and all of the things. So we were kind of riding a line, I imagine. And I wasn't involved in that part of it, but I do know that at some point, what do you call them? Appraiser came in. People started coming in and with their clipboards and writing things down. I'm like, what's going on? And then, this sort of, just to sort of make it, the easiest way to say it is just that the time had come to an end for the Warehouse Art Hotel. And I had 2 months, maybe 3, to move out. And we're talking 20 years of, and a full business of, 5, 6 beds and, full rooms of, it's not just like an easy rider truck situation. And not knowing where I was going to go because I didn't really expect it. But I was about 5 minutes away from, metaphorically, from moving in with my aunt in Virginia on her horse farm. And she wanted to do a similar thing up there in Northern Virginia where craftsmen would show, we'd have quilts and, kind of do the same thing. It didn't feel, it was a very scary time. I was putting it out there to other people, like, do you have a building? Do you have a building? Do you have a building? Like, I didn't want to stop doing because it just seemed like a premature end. We were at this level we had like the biggest art show ever the day before lockdown, and the whole community showed up, and it was this incredible photographer from New York, and oh my gosh, it was like, oh, here we go, and then just, and then I get a phone call from Mitchell from, he's and he was Mitchell Britt, and he was friends with this guy, Bryce Shearburn, who back in the day I used to wait tables on with him, for him, whatever. He used to come in for Sunday brunch at the Zevely House, and I knew Bryce, and Bryce was a hoot, and I knew he owned real estate and buildings, and he said, I think I have something for you. And we had a meeting, and he gave me a tour of this building on Green and Apple, and it was pretty run down, and but I immediately, terrifyingly saw potential in it. Like, oh God, here we go. And I was so exhausted. Like, I put everything, I'd already sold half of everything because I had a huge warehouse yard sale, like where everyone took all the best stuff. And so I didn't know what I was going to do, but it came together pretty quickly, and we're still working on the upstairs, but the downstairs is completely done and has the solarium, which is this sort of alternative event space. It's perfect for the climate we're in right now. It's outside, and and maybe we're not ready to be crammed into a gallery yet. I don't know. Like, personally, me, I'm still baby steps with, being in groups of people. I'm still careful and, try to watch myself. But so the whole purpose behind it, the mission, I haven't forgotten this, is the same as it was before, just it has less influence of like trying to relive this historical warehouse scenario, and more about taking the part where we promote and sell artists and put art in front of eyes of people, and lodging for art and art for lodging, and and just bringing in some weird, keeping Winston weird, and all of those, clever taglines that Fuzz Fest had, which is great. But just like what is this community? What hasn't Winston seen yet? What do we need? Or and kind of trying to do that. And it's slow going because I'm juggling. We're still in the work. It's just I can't wait for 5 years from now.
Yeah.
When everything is running on all gears and has been figured out, and then I can spend all the time dreaming about, like, who can we bring in, who can we, what can we offer. So
yeah,
but we're doing what we can with what we have right now.
Sure. Yeah. Well, cool. So that pretty much gets us up to speed.
Yeah. Tessa's gonna be mad because this isn't. We got more Full Moon Festival.
Yeah.
Full Moon Festival, which is on September 10th between 4 and 10 p.m. And if you're curious of what we've talked about, we're giving tours of the hotel during that time also. And the solarium will be open, and there will be live music at the public house next door. And all of this music actually there are no bands. It's just singular.
Oh, cool.
I don't want to say singer-songwriter, but, there's kind of there's kind of a psych folk vibe to it, like psychedelic folk, esoteric Appalachian, Yeah,
I was looking through the list today. They all have a very different twist to them.
Yeah. And I'm really actually pretty excited about that. And one of the reasons why we didn't have bands, and this is why in the future we want to do maybe 2 nights, and have vendor festival one, and then the next day all music. But it's really hard to combine the full band and people trying to, like have conversations about their work and their art, the vendors, while it's going on. So just keeping that one artist at a time is probably is in experience a good thing, because we've had the art marts at the Ramcat where we've had live bands like in there, or at the warehouse we had our first one, and it was just like way too loud to have like, what did you say this was $20? 30? What is it made of? So yeah, so that's on purpose.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looked like a really interesting variety of music. I'm stoked about it.
Good.
There's some projection involved and some weird cultural differences.
Yeah, that's going to be neat.
Yeah.
It'll be like bird sounds and performance art. Yeah, I'm really excited about that. And that piece, I can't remember. Ocean.
We have the press release pulled up if we need to.
But that'll be happening in the solarium. That's the only show that's happening in the solarium because of our projector situation.
Gotcha.
So everything else will be on the stage at Public House. And it's free to get into. So you don't have to pay a cover charge to see it. You just grab your drink and come out and enjoy the music.
Very cool.
And then pop over to this and that in between, so it's kind of neat.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you for like kind of, I don't know, going through the whole history of Winston Cranky's stuff with me too, because I like it's a really like what I've noted. I mean, I've talked to Richard and Andy, and I've talked to artists that have been around for a while, some not in Winston, but I've talked to a lot of people, and it's sometimes I feel like I'm putting together just like a portrait of where exactly we are and where exactly we're trying to go.
Yeah.
And the where we are and where we've been portion is pretty important to me. Like the sort of documentation of an understanding of what all has taken place that has made Winston what it is now. And it's important. And I think the whole warehouse experience was super significant to all that. So thanks for walking me through sort of what
and
that
I will
was.
say, it was such a magical time and singular in itself. And I have no idea what Winston would look like had that not happened. And I've had a lot of people say that, this is the reason, ... and the whole Phil Haynes aspect to it. I mean, there's so much. I've literally just spread a thin layer of butter on to what is an incredibly complex story of how it actually,
Yeah.
But, and maybe that's for a future podcast or a little book. I mean, we've been talking about some kind of cool picture book about it. But it was so cool. Like, yeah, nobody was downtown. If you can just picture that, like nothing was downtown except the warehouse.
Yeah.
And people would come in from all over to the only place to go would be to the warehouse to see some insanely incredible music, and we didn't have the cell phones,
Yeah.
The documentation of it is very thin, but what is out there is really good because it's on film cameras and, it just seems like yesterday, and I can't believe I feel as, old that so much time has passed, but it was a very special time for this city. And I guess. Yeah.
There, like you just hinted at something that would be really interesting for me to run with. Like there is this story of the Arts Council and Haynes and this decision for UNCSA to come here and all this shit that was like a part of trying to make Winston into this artistic place that precedes like all of us, all the everyman artist people. And then, I think my perspective of it before, like when I was a kid, Richard was, when I say a kid, when I was like on the cusp of entering into downtown, Richard was already doing stuff downtown and kind of participating in trying to revivify sort of the city. So I saw that there was such a thing as art in Winston, and I think prior to that I didn't know that. But it's just interesting to me that all that groundwork was laid, and it was basically dormant until this time period that Richard and the warehouse was pretty much deciding we're gonna like fucking take it upon ourselves to do this shit. And it's not like that was from the top down. It's not like like the state of North Carolina came in. It was like artists came in. Grassroots.
And I will say that I feel, again, I would be curious too, because we always say like, oh, we were the first here. But honestly, there's probably been so many variants of this that we don't even have knowledge of, because all those people have passed and there wasn't documentation of what kind of underground art scene. There are people that know about this stuff, and I am curious even to what connections those have made. Some sort of like arts family tree, as it were, of Winston-Salem would be really cool.
That would be cool
to investigate. But Phil Haynes had a big part in, he was influenced by the Haight-Ashbury scene. I always thought of it like his family opened Haynes Mall or whatever, and then it stole downtown, and he spent his life dedicated to like making it coming back, and bringing the restaurants in and the restaurant rows. But he was a big fan of ours. We met up with him as a warehouse collective in San Francisco, where we got to have lunch with Lawrence Ferlinghetti. And that's on film. That's on the Invisible States if you go on the YouTube movie part. But we had a big fire at the warehouse at one point, and he and his assistant came in and just ripped everyone a new asshole, and, made us get a modicum bit more legitimized by putting in these insane, fire strobe alarms, and making it just batting the hatches, and making everything a little tighter, because you used to read all these articles about these arts communities that would go up in flames literally because they had no, so he really helped us like have a connection with the fire department and not be these like, who are these weirdo, stuff like that. He never gave us money. I just have to say that. But he did, kick us in the butt and introduce us, which he was a genius at, was the networking, so introduce us to the people that can help us, do certain things. So to get a little bit more,
So. Here's a weird brain question for you that just came to mind. Looking at Winston and what it is like right now, is that experience like, are you super thrilled to see that it's developed as much as it has? Or is there a part of you that kind of misses that down home shit?
I mean, sure, I miss it, but I feel like this is everywhere. Like, I'm having trouble seeing that this kind of development isn't happening like it's cultural, like, and it has everything to do with our computers and our things and At the same time, like, the best thing I've always had I'm a leaf on the creek, and a rock's coming and you just like divert, but keep moving forward and not to get hung up on, what was or what we can't do anymore, or, but what can we do, and what actually, like, looking through what might be kind of painful and seeing how that can, what we can take from, learn from, and utilize. And now, so like with technology, how can this make something better, or what beyond, I don't know. I'm basically saying, like, there's nothing you can do about it. And the best course of action is to just keep moving forward. And see what opportunities arise out of a new landscape,
I think it truly is inevitable, and these patterns I'm sure these patterns have been observed in the U.S. and in other parts of the world like before, like what happens and how it ebbs and flows. I'm glad that we have some variety. I mean, I think I noticed too that there's like, I don't know, sometimes it's like we can never be happy, and I get that. I feel that way sometimes. Like, I mean, I can give you a list of things that I wish were downtown that aren't, or whatever, and I can definitely give you a list of things that are downtown that I wish weren't. But you know, you know, there's still on the positive side. There's a lot of variety downtown. I think there's more economic stability than at least there was. I don't know what things are like now. I feel a little divorced from downtown now, but you know, we're just talking about like what there is and not necessarily where we are economically, but like where we are nationally economically, I guess. But there's a lot of variety. There's a lot of people that have done a lot of interesting shit downtown, and I'm glad for that.
Yeah. I think you should always complain. Like, I think you should always question and, you know, say, this is what I want. Why are you calling yourself the city of this or that when you don't have this or that, or what, you know, like, and then at that point you either like step to the back of the crowd or you step up and say, okay, I have this idea to, you know, bring this to you, or, you know, I have the best time like trolling stuff downtown, not trolling, but like personally, like they'll hang a logo on the side of the building and I'll be like, that's crooked.
Yeah.
Like, you know, or those rings that they put on the smokestacks, you know.
Yeah.
You call them rave bracelets, you know, or something. Or Gears and Guitars, like, really better than Ezra again, like, or, you know, just, you can just say all that stuff and it's lots of fun. Actually, it lets that, you know, it just releases it. But but then at that point, like, just don't let it eat you up, because then you're not capable of, if when that moment comes where you see an opportunity to actually, you know, offer something, you know, I don't know.
I mean, sort of. The one thing that eats me up is when I'm at Bailey Park and that Deke Town thing is across the corner from Cranky's. Yeah. And I find that really insulting.
It actually popped into my head when you said something to the effect of like,
not wanting things downtown.
Things that I don't want downtown. Yeah. That was what popped into my head. But we have, you know, artist Michael Schmidt, or I think, is that his name? Nicholas Schmidt. Sorry, Nick.
Oh.
Remember, and he did that, you know, he, as an artist, had a call and response to that specifically. And even though he got, you know, painted over, he got all this, you know, so now it's in the cultural, like,
milieu
of, Yeah. So there are things that, you know, as artists, you're allowed to question stuff.
Sorta.
Yeah.
And then they like push you off to the outskirts of town or whatever. And that was a beautiful story regardless. Yeah. I'm glad that his piece still exists somewhere. You know, I'm glad that the artist found a space for him. But I find it really insulting, like, given the conversation we've just had and laid out and all this shit that happened before Wake Forest, like, and I'm not trying to cast shade. I have no sponsorship. I'm totally independent, so I don't give a fuck what anybody thinks. But like, it's insulting knowing all the shit that was done by individuals in our community, and this, to me, that statement that's on this fucking case for a dumpster is like, we invented Innovation Corridor. Wake Forest did it, and it's like, I find that really fucking gross.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's not what happened.
Yeah. It's erasing a whole history of everything. I don't know.
Yeah. Then nothing can be done about it. They've obviously got...
But I said to somebody the other day, Innovation Corridor to me feels like a bubble now. Like, it's just its own entity. You know, it's its own town, its own village, its own part. You head up a block, like, maybe start at the Kimpton, you know, or start at that parking garage right there. You could even start at Cranky's. I haven't been there in a while.
Yeah.
But, you know, Cranky's is trying so hard to, like, you know, or I don't know. They're still like outsider, you know. They're still like, they grew this crazy gardenscape of wildflowers and put a big giant container in the parking lot that they're like constantly, it's still like, a little bit like probably an eyesore to something like Wake Forest. So
hopefully so.
Way to go.
Yeah. Got to keep that spirit alive. Yeah. And I'd like the record to show, as we promote your event, that Haydee did not say anything mean about anybody.
Oh.
Only I did.
And I try, yeah. I'll be running for office. Vote for me. No.
There's a lot of value to keeping that outsider shit alive, and it moved. Yeah. It's moved all sorts of different places since the warehouse became Cranky's. I'm sure. Yeah. Like, I think Hoots has had some of that spirit. I think the Black Lodge, which I never really participated in, but that was another thing.
Yeah, it's amazing.
That spirit has just kind of popped up all over Winston, and it stays alive, I guess.
Yep. And these were all started by Warehousians, which is kind of neat. No longer, but yeah.
Right.
But that's okay. Like, let's just keep, we're any second now we're going to die. So, just do what we can.
I think that should be a T-shirt. Yeah. Any second now we're going to die. Yeah. I want us to end on a full moon note. So
okay, great. Yeah.
Food. I don't know if we've talked about the food.
So we have El Burrito Bueno. We have Sweetheart Pizza. We have Acadia Foods. I'm very excited to announce that we are also hosting the very famous Mary Hagland is coming to our event from Mary's Gourmet, Mary's of Course.
Mary's of Course, yeah.
And Gourmet Cafe. And she'll be serving snacks like
Holy
her
shit.
pimentoless pimento cheese and her famous salsa with chips and stuff. So she will be there. We're still working on what's happening in the solarium as far as like a little adult bar hangout there. So I don't want to announce it. I wish I could, but I'm kind of figuring it out. But there will be something cool in there. But I think we did have... I think that's it. We had 2 people that had to back out that I was really excited about. But, I mean, I will say that we had Nasty Dogs, because I'm just going to promote them anyway.
Okay.
And we had... Native Root, which is one of my favorite. Jordan, she's like, she has food she makes every Thursday at the public house, and it smells so good, and it's so good. But anyway, I just wanted to go ahead and say those. But they're not going to be at the festival, so
yeah, still friends though.
Yeah, but anyway, so that's what we have. We have pizza and burritos, and maybe some cool curry or something from Acadia Foods, I don't know, and snacks from Mary Hagland. So
that's amazing.
Yeah.
So we got food covered, we got music going on.
Yep.
And then you got a variety of different artists that are going to be featured.
And the best way to kind of peruse, and we're doing vendor highlights every day. So on Instagram, Full Moon Festival NC Instagram, you can see all the lists and multiple pictures of who's there. There's a website too, but I think the Instagram is more concise. It has more.
And people use Instagram every day.
Yeah, and you can just click on that and then see their whole history if something catches your eye. So
yeah, awesome, perfect.
Yay.
Well, great. I hope it's an awesome time, and I hope that there'll be years and years of these.
I hope so too. Thanks, Tyler. Thank you.
Thank you for coming over, for real.
It was fun. Thanks.
All right.
Sweet.
She did good.
Yeah, she did.